Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The views, opinions, or advice offered by this show's host do not necessarily reflect those of News Talk 780 KOH or its parent company, Cumulus Media. This is Bosma On Business with award-winning entrepreneur Mike Bosma, sponsored by Keystone CPAs. We're getting Northern Nevada back to business.
Good morning, business owners. It's Mike Bosma, your business-savvy CPA, come to you from the KOH studio. Hey, you Garden Show listeners, you want to hang tight and hang on. Today's installment of Bosma On Business, I'm going to help you understand how to make a buck or two, not in the garden, but in your automobile. Yes, on today's installment of Bosma On Business, I have an expert at fixing things, and he's going to help you learn to know when it makes sense to fix it versus when it makes sense to put it in the landfill. Well, at least that's what we're going to try and do. Today's installment of Bosma On Business. Of course, each and every Saturday, 60 minutes of action-packed business adventure. Now, today, I had this idea when I picked up my truck. I have a fun truck that is currently my daily driver, and I have a buddy who owns Bimmer Experts and generally works on BMWs, but he graciously agreed to squeeze my rig in to get some wrench into it. But and I thought, his story, his name's John Trautwein, again, owner of Bimmer Experts, and has a great story of what, all things entrepreneurial. And so without further ado, John, welcome to Bosma On Business.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here.
So we start off with just a little bit of elevator pitch. So if I ran into you, at Scholarship Camp, which is where I met you years and years ago, when you were little Johnny Trautwein. But I was camp counselor, yellow team captain, and
go green.
Go green. But so how'd you get into the automotive business?
Kind of fell into it in high school, actually. Took a small engine class as a freshman and took apart a lawnmower engine and put it back together, and shockingly, it still ran.
Awesome.
And kind of took flight from there.
Okay. Now, you didn't just start off your automotive repair shop. How'd you end up there? What was your journey?
18, started at a small BMW shop and worked there. Took it from kind of a small shop through a couple different owners, grew with the shop, learned a lot, and got to a point where we'd grown the shop, got it a lot better, and then things started to kind of turn the other way, and talked to owners, tried to get changes to happen, and kind of went to lunch with the two owners at the time, tried to get them to make changes, and they kind of turned it around on me and said, well, if you want to fix it, why don't you just buy part of it and then you can fix it yourself?
Well, there you go. So you buy in and eventually buy out, I guess. So,
yep.
And that's where when we reconnected, probably decades after we met, I was business brokering and you were looking for a piece of real estate, and we started talking, and I said, it might be better to buy this business, air quotes business, which it was a business. It was, a great location, a lot of visibility. And I said, I think it'll make sense to buy this business, and you end up buying that business. And then kind of the rest, as you say, is history. But now you own 100% of Bimmer Experts. So what's the premise? What's the business premise of business Bimmer? And is it Bimmer or Beamer?
It's Beamer.
It's Beamer.
Beamer.
Okay, spelled Bimmer.
Yep.
Okay. See, these are all the things you learn here
Google
about
Matters.
business. There you go. Okay.
That's what people search, but we say Beamer.
Okay. So on Beamer Experts, so how do you decide I just want to fix BMWs?
Once again, kind of fell into it at 18. That's what I started doing, and I was a Chevy guy.
Okay. Which I appreciate.
Well, still am a little bit. Started working on BMWs and started driving them and kind of fell in love, and been working on them since I was 18, and here we are almost 20 years later.
Right. And when you decided to go into business, kind of what, how did you decide, employees, business model, how does the business work?
The first time around, it was buying into a established business, already had employees, and just trying to take something that was kind of sort of breaking even, actually turn it into something that made money and you can actually walk away from for some period of time and not have everything fall down on your face, and learned the hard way how not to do that.
We call it the PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. Right? It is a valuable lesson. In fact, it's funny. Every once in a while, I'll run into a young whippersnapper who think they know everything, and I, which is good. I mean, hey, I love confidence. But you just have to get your competence up to your confidence level.
There you go.
And usually, those licks you take when you get recalibrated are, they smart. Smart. So
you can learn lessons the hard way.
You can. So you get started. Now, I guess from a customer perspective, what's your marketing strategy? How do you let people know you're around?
Very little marketing. Basically zero marketing. All word of mouth. Just basically try to wow everybody and have them tell all their friends and bring your car to us. Give you the best advice we can. Tell you the good, the bad, the ugly. Give it to you straight and try and guide you on what fits for you. Right.
And I think, that's been my frustration with some automobile shops. And I understand the business model, the great shops, but they, it's hard for them to look at a problem without it being, a $2,000 problem. And sometimes you're not talking about a $2,000 car.
No, you're not.
So you're like, okay, how do I make this make sense? Yeah, but and there's a lot of shops out there, and God bless them. I'm friends with a bunch of them, but it's just like because they're so far removed. It's like no, it has to be by the book. Or I remember I had my Escalade because I decided to put a whole truckload of gravel in the bed. Blew out my suspension, and so because it has adjustable air shocks, and so it blows out the air shocks. But then because the onboard compressor keeps running, I blew out the compressor. Then I take it in, and they're like, well, it's $2,000. I'm like, well, I don't know that makes sense to invest $2,000 into a 15-year-old truck that's a little past its prime. But and I thought about it. It's like you could all kinds of solutions on that thing, but they're just not according to the book.
Yes,
right. It's like you just put shocks on it.
Yeah. Can you put a steel spring in there and call it a day? Yeah.
Right.
There's going to be a warning on, but that's where I think getting to know the customer is huge. Mm-hmm. What's the customer looking for? What do they want? Some guys want it fixed perfect, no matter the cost, doesn't matter, and other guys are like, I want 2 more years out of this car. As long as it's safe to drive and good enough, I'm happy.
Right. No, that's it. Right.
And how can you give them that?
Right. And I think that's, so ever since, you started this business, John, just so you know, I'm trying to find a BMW because now I have a good mechanic.
Well, we'll find you a BMW. Mike.
Okay. Well,
or 3.
Or 3, or no, 1. My wife this morning told me I'm a little overzealous. We added up how many cars we've had in our lifetime. And I've had 40.
That's it?
So she's had 8, including the 3 that she's had since she's known me.
My wife and I don't talk about that.
Yeah, right. So some things are better left unspoken.
We don't add them up because we might not like the number. So
right.
We just
don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to.
Indeed.
That's your nugget of wisdom on today's installment of Bosma On Business. Do not ask questions that you do not want to know the answer to.
Or you don't want your wife to know the answer.
Right. Well, and that's it's interesting to talk about spending limits. We have our up to amounts, and when we got married, where we have joint everything. So like with your wife, do you have I can spend up to this amount without having to ask permission?
For the most part, I think we don't have an actual number as much as we're both pretty diligent about that. We like nice things. We just don't like spending money. Mm-hmm. And so we're pretty good about saving rather than spending and talking each other out of spending money, and not in a argumentative way, more of a talking reason to each other.
Right.
You see red. Ooh, I want this shiny. Right. And pretty good at just talking each other down off the ledge.
Right.
And I think we both talk ourselves out of a lot of things because you just don't need it at the end of the day.
Right.
And it's funny you mentioned this because just the other day my wife was like, "How much did that cost?" I'm like, "Oh, babe, it's for the business bought." And
that's it.
I got kind of lit up over that one.
Right.
And so, she's like, "Well, you could buy whatever you want." I'm like, "Well, no, that's not true. I mean, it has to actually be for the business. I can't just buy anything I want."
Right.
But she's like, "So you could spend as much as you want." And I'm like, "No, but the perception there is definitely,
Well, so our initial agreed to limits were she had $500 and I had $5,000, right? Because I know I can buy a project for under $5,000, right? And so the problem with the project is you buy the project, but then you have to make the project work.
There you go.
And so, it would, but if you bought it as a completed project, it's a $15,000 project. So you have to buy it under $5,000 and then, put a $2,000 here, $2,000 there, $1,500 there, right? And you chip away at it.
You start adding it up, you're like, wait, I spent $20,000 on a $15,000 project.
There you go. Right. So that's how we're cornering them. But actually, there is a market out there. And that's where I got to thinking last night. So, which is why I invited you on the radio show. I was like, there's a way to make a buck on this stuff. And I think that I love the concept of the side hustle, and so you started tinkering, rebuilt a lawnmower, a small engine, and they're like, oh, I can see how all this comes together, and then you're like, oh, well, heck, if you can buy something right and put a little blood, sweat, and tears into it, and that's where it was like, my rig, it was funny, I bought, it's an 85 Chevy Silverado, 3-inch lift kit, big tires, it's, some would call it a midlife crisis. I just call it fun. And, but what's funny is like, and I just always wanted a step side. I wanted this truck always ever since I was a kid. So I I find the truck and it has a brand new engine and tranny in it. So I'm like, it's got it, I bought it for $8,000. It has $10,000 of engine and transmission in it that I can pull out and put in whatever I want. So even if the truck's completely junk, I can part out the truck and then salvage the engine out of it and probably put that engine in my Trans Am and have a good, tons of fun.
Yeah.
Right. But anyway, the reason I mention is this. So there's a way to make a buck, right? And so sometimes the way to do that is, do DoorDash or, where you're driving around doing stuff. But I think the fun part, if you're any mechanically inclined at all, is how do you partner with a shop like yours to be able to say, okay, because some things are just, especially with technology now, just outside of people's ability to do this in their garage.
Absolutely.
So that's where when I bought this truck, I just basically powertrain's brand new. He put, and he used to work at O'Reilly, so he got all this stuff at cost. So he got a smoking deal on it. I get it, right? So, and he had some mechanical chops, so I felt pretty good. I took it for a test drive, but I'm like, it's $8,000 for a $10,000 engine and tranny, and let's just.
Comes with the truck for free.
Right, the truck is free. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how to be able to get your next automobile for free. You heard it here and only here. It's Bosma On Business. It's like 780 KWH.
Our house is a mess. Come on in. I'm Amber Wallen, internet comedian and host of your new favorite podcast, Fly on the Wall.
Okay, that's pretty presumptuous to assume that this is going to be their favorite podcast, by the way.
Anyway, that wasp that you just heard interrupt me is my husband.
And co-host, Benjamin Wallen.
Listen in as we discuss relationships and keeping our sweet baby kid alive.
Fly on the Wallen, wherever you listen.
Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host, Mike Bosma, in here with John Trautwein, owner of Bimmer Experts, talking about the way to make a buck or two or drive a car for free. And so that's where, and again, just, with, automobiles going longer and longer and longer. I mean, I had a buddy one time and he has a bunch of cars that he rents on Turo. And I said, well, what kind of car? He says, he gets these the Fiat 500s. Mm-hmm. Because they're free, like less than $10,000, but it's like they go, a relatively long amount of time. So you can buy it for cheap, and everybody just wants to save a buck or two. That's why they're in Turo. So they want to get the cheapest option possible. So okay, drive around a little clown car, go for it. But what got me thinking on that was he says, yeah, because when we use it for a year, drive the wheels off it, and then sell it for basically what I bought it for. So you got the car for free. And again, that's always looking at a way to, cheese the system, or, because a lot of times people are like, a little defeated, where you're like, man, I have to, and I'm in that spot now because I'm short a car, and which is why I'm driving around my 85 Silverado.
Daily driver.
But it's funny. So but I knew when I test drove it that the carburetor was out of whack. And it had some issues. But I was like, there's nothing. The bones on it were good. So like, okay, it's just that this guy, he's never, because I was that guy when I was his age. Right, I would never consider walking into an automobile shop and having something fixed because I should be able to do it myself. There is YouTube, after all. Trial and error. And I, as a young guy, he has unlimited time. He's like, okay, I'm going to wrench on this, but he doesn't have the diagnostic equipment, right? Then I'm like, no, just hook it up to the scope. It's going to tell you can dial in that carburetor, get it so it's lean and mean and run the way it's supposed to, get it timed. It just doesn't, because the equipment now is where the spend is. Not so much the labor. The labor is expensive, but the equipment, if you have the right equipment, you can fix anything. So. But what was fascinating when I thinking last night driving home, and the truck drives great, right? I picked it up yesterday. I was like, oh, this is how this truck's supposed to feel when you drive, when you hit the gas where it's supposed to go. I actually got invited, back into the garage because you fixed the gas leaks. So appreciate that.
It was leaking quite a bit.
But I knew, right? But those are, there's nothing overly complicated about those. But the thing is, the fun part of it is like when you're looking at to make a buck or two, right? And you just have to look at the world differently. So, I talked about my Turo example, but so that's where, you've seen case after case after case where people are kind of betwixt and between. What should they do with their car? So if like right now, and I know you're a Bimmer expert, but if you're going to buy a Bimmer, what year, make, and model is the best value to buy a Bimmer?
It's a tough question because it's going to vary person to person.
Mm-hmm.
What do you need? What do I need? What do they need? Is it a single guy that needs a little two-seater that could be really practical and fun to drive? Or me, I've got 4 kids and a wife. Right. So, I'm limited to really 2 cars that BMW makes that fit what I need. And that's a 7-seat X5 or a 7-seat X7. Okay. Whereas I have plenty of other BMWs that are 5-seaters or 2-seaters or other things like that. There's certain years and models you want to avoid that are just not worth the trouble that comes with them. And the other side
what are those?
I would say the 07 to 2010 335. It's a very popular car because it can make a lot of power. It was BMW's first big foray into turbos and direct fuel injection. And it was groundbreaking technology. And the injectors have been revised 12 times.
Wow, okay, right.
And recalled at least once, if not 2 or 3 times. And if you want to buy one new fuel injector, they're $550 a piece right now.
Oh!
And that's a normal maintenance item.
Right.
So when I say, hey, you need injectors, it's going to be almost $4,000. And the car's worth about $7,000.
Right.
So oil leaks are notorious. Turbos are notorious. You need to put turbos in the car. It's over $5,000. I mean, it's just great car to drive. I mean, I'd drive one in a heartbeat. You'd love driving it.
Right.
You just don't want to pay for it.
Right. Well, that's good intel, right? That's where it's like, as I got to think about it, it's like, yeah, if, I can go like right now, I've the cars that are the biggest bang for the buck have some type of rebuilt or salvage title.
Yep.
Right. And so, but the problem is you don't know what you're getting. Right. So like, what problems are you borrowing?
Yes.
But can't they just take it to you and you go through the car?
So that's where we offer pre-purchase inspections.
Right.
And we, tell our customers constantly, bring it in first. And, you can't always buy one in town because what you're looking for might not be in Reno, Sparks, Tahoe area. And so the other side of that is find someone similar, whether it's a BMW or a Chevy or whatever it is, find someone in the area that you're buying that vehicle and have them look at it. If they charge $100, $200, I don't care if they charge $500 on a $5,000 car. It could prevent you from having a $10,000 headache.
Right.
Right.
No, that's it. Right.
And you just need to know what you're buying. Right. That's all we want to know. Mm-hmm. Like, is this worth the headache, the problem? Is it a $100,000 car? Is it a $500 car? They all can come with huge issues.
Well, and that's where as I was getting to know you, John, and your business model, which I think is genius because, with the way cars are put together now, if I'm a generalist trying to work on everything, basically I'm leaning on the book right now. The book in automobile parlance is, there's a standardized book that says this is how long it should take to repair pretty much anything on any vehicle ever. And so, it needs a water pump. It's this much. And so the good mechanics are all able to beat the book. If the book says it's 10 hours, if I can do that in 8 hours, I'm going to get paid for 10 hours, even though I only spent 8. Right? There
you go.
And then, of course, if you did a poor install, you're going to have to do it for free when you have to
redo it for free.
So it's just finding that right balance of kind of speed and efficiency. But once you know a vehicle, that's where I was like, I've grown up on Chevys. I remember the first time I think about buying a Ford and the distributor is in the wrong part of the engine. I'm like, I don't want to learn a new one.
No, that's not right.
This is wrong. So. But that's where you're like, okay, but once you know it, right, you're like, okay, you kind of get your wits about you. But once you're like an expert in, like with BMW, in your case, basically you already know, no, here's the car, here's the years that you really want to stay away from. And you just know it because you work in it every day.
It's what we do all day long. You learn what the problems are, what to look for, and that's the biggest thing. I just had a customer with a 4-year-old M5, not a cheap car, and it just went to another place that should know what they were doing, and they put the wrong spark plugs in it. It was by the book, the right spark plug, but he'd had his car turned up a little bit, and they knew the plugs coming out didn't match the ones they put in.
But they still didn't ask. You're like, hey.
He told them.
Okay.
But they just said, nope, it has to be this plug. Now the car doesn't run right, and we have to go back and put a new version of the old plug back in it.
Right.
And it doesn't run right. And so it's just those little details can make all the difference in the world. Right. It's a toy. It's an expensive toy, but he bought it because it's fast and it's fun. Mm-hmm. And when it's not that, after he spent money fixing it, you don't have a happy customer.
Right. Yeah. You want it to run like new, and yeah, no, I got you. So, but I am curious, because I'm seeing more turbos now more than ever. Mm-hmm. Now even superchargers, which were unheard of not too many years ago. So how hard is that on an engine?
They're all built for it at this point. I mean, if you're talking about putting a supercharger or a turbocharger on a car that isn't, then that answer is very vehicle specific on if that's a good idea or not. But newer cars, they're designed from the beginning to have turbos or superchargers, very reliable. I mean, the turbochargers, on average, you get, a 80 to 150,000 mile lifespan out of those before they just kind of get worn and start to have problems. And yeah, it's an expensive replacement, but the car drives a lot better. It's more fuel efficient. It has more power. So,
I got you. So let's do. I got John Trautwein from Bimmer Experts giving us the 411 on how to be smart about your automobile purchases, maintenance, all of the above. We come back, going to continue the thread. It's called Bosma On Business. Newstalk 780 KOH. Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host Mike Bosma. Talking about the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s of just being smart about automobiles, and probably one of those things. If you can afford it. Just buy a new car every 4 years. You don't have to think about it real hard. But I don't know. That just doesn't sound fun. And that's where, a lot of times, there's people who, my wife included, she, her family every year, they would just drive their white Toyota Camry until it died. And then they buy a new one, and, same model, but it's just, for the entrepreneurs in this, John, it just ain't sexy. So, nope. But of course, and again, you can spend a lot of money, but I don't want to do that either. Like you said, I want to get a lot for little. And so you're always trying to game the system there. But, I guess I'm curious. We were talking a little bit on the break. I think it'd be good radio fodder because, now turbos, superchargers, more common than they've ever been before. I'm just concerned, are you going to blow, are you going to burn through your engine? Is it going to get, 150, 200,000 miles before it's trashed?
The average BMW with the turbo, which is basically every new model now. BMW doesn't offer anything that's not turbocharged anymore. They are all turbocharged. Okay. Every model, it's different sized engines, different sized turbochargers, whether it's a 4-cylinder, a 3-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, or an 8-cylinder. They all have turbos on them. I've seen turbo engines with 230,000 miles on them. They got a set of turbos because the turbos did not last that long. But a properly maintained engine as long as it doesn't have inherent design flaws, like some of the earlier 4-cylinder BMWs that were turbos. The turbos weren't the problem. It was the timing chains.
Right. Okay.
And that has nothing to do with being turbocharged. That has to do with they designed it too cheap and it didn't last.
Right.
Which all manufacturers are ran by accountants and lawyers. They are not ran by engineers and car guys anymore. And that's why we see certain years and models that have issues because they went a little too far one direction.
The accountants got too involved.
You know those accountants, Mike.
Well, so that's where my deal is. I want a 2020 Cadillac CT6V, which is a V8 supercharged. Now, but when I'm looking at that, and of course, and they discontinued, only did it for 2 years, but now they're going to make only electric cars. So it's really rare car to find. In fact, it's very difficult to find. But the thing is, as I'm looking at it, I'm reading up on it. It's like, so they didn't use forged pistons. They used aluminum pistons, and I'm like going, you're 660 horsepower. Like, what? Is it going to survive? I'm just saying it's going to flame.
I mean, there's 3 general piston designs without going on too much of a tangent here. They're all aluminum, but it's cast aluminum, hyper-eutectic aluminum, or forged aluminum. And that's just the grain structure inside of it and how strong it is. So they're all aluminum. It's just a matter of how was that piston assembled or put together.
Right.
And years ago, everybody always wanted forged. Forged is strong, but it typically doesn't last as long because of the way it expands and contracts.
Okay.
The most popular right now is actually the hyper-eutectic because it's a good balance between strength and cost. Those pistons in BMWs, which I don't know about the Cadillac, but regularly will go 150, 200,000 plus miles. And normally if they break, it's because somebody knew it had an issue, continued to drive it until it broke.
Right.
It was not a design flaw as much as it was user abuse.
Right.
Certain years, certain manufacturers had massive issues with that, and that's where you've got to do the research on that model. And if it's worth it, it wouldn't bother me a bit.
Okay, no, I got you. So that's where I think those are things, because I think last week Brian Wheeler talking about really saving a buck or two between now and the end of the year, and now really in that same light, it's like, okay, everybody generally in our economy, if you don't have a car, you're kind of hurting for certain. And I think that's where if you're just a little bit more informed, right, you can always buy the Toyota Camry, and that car's going to go 200,000, 300,000 miles, and just keep driving till the wheels fall
bang
off.
for the buck. It's hard to beat. I mean, your
Right.
Toyotas, your Hondas, the Camrys, the Accords, the Civics, the Corollas. If you want something cheap, reliable, no, it's not the most exciting thing in the world to drive. It's not the coolest looking, but bang for your buck. Don't buy a German car.
Right, because the maintenance is a little bit more.
It's more expensive.
But if you want to have fun and have a life,
there you go.
Then you have to decide, okay, do I buy this thing new and watch it depreciate, or do I get something a little older after that depreciation curve? But then you need to be able to know somebody like John at Bimmer Experts that could kind of go through it and make sure you're not buying somebody else's problem.
I'll give you an example. I have a customer that has a 02 745i, which is a $100,000 car in 2002 when it was brand new. My recommendation to anybody that owns one of those right now is go take it to pick and pull and get rid of it now.
Wow.
He brought us the car after somebody else had done a little bit of work, not a lot, and said, I just want check engine light off. Shouldn't cost much money. How much does check engine light cost to get off, Mike?
$150.
There you go, sure. I said, it's going to cost you at least $14,000.
Whoa!
You need to get rid of this car. Do not fix this car.
Right.
He called back and said, I want the car fixed, but I don't want to spend that much money. I said, okay, you need to come down. We need to talk. Brought him down again. I said, we should not fix this car. Give me $5,000. I will burn it, and I will save you money. Came back again after saying, well, just tell me the rest of the problems. Okay, we told him the rest of the problems. There was more. This is only to fix the check engine light. The rest of the car was quite literally falling apart.
Right.
Came down a third time. I brought myself and my senior tech to tag team him and say, do not fix this car. Middle of the conversation, he takes 2 coffee cans that he was holding, puts them up on the counter, said, there's $10,000. Somebody's getting it to fix this car. Is it you or somebody else? So we fixed the car. First thing we did is put it up in the air, drain the oil. It was full of metal.
Oh.
So now it needed an engine on top of the $14,000 to fix all the other issues that are attached to the engine. So we finally go through and do all this and spend $20,000 on a $4,000 car. After we've told him time and time again, do not fix this car. Do not fix this car. Right now, we have the check engine light off. It's been about a year and a half, and he's about $50,000 into this car. We've now fixed all the other issues because he's like, it runs so good, but it drives like junk. Okay, well, hold on for another ride. And, you know, what could we have gotten him for that $50,000? You know?
Yeah, you could have got, like actually like a BMW. It's a year or two old. A
lot of really cool BMWs, you know, depending on what his preference was. I mean, I could have gotten him a much newer 7 Series with maybe 30,000 miles on it. But that's what he wanted. That's what we did.
Yeah, and that's where it is interesting, right? Is that, you know, they're going to stop. And you wonder about the cars of today, you know, like, you know, my, you know, and, you know, so the cars of yesterday, right? The cars from when I was in high school and, you know, going to college. You know, I think those cars are going to be the cars of forever. Yeah. Because, you know, having a naturally aspirated car that anybody can work on is actually going to become pretty dang rare.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, basically, I know there's nothing on this truck that I can't fix. So I'm always kind of preparing for Armageddon.
Well, and I mean, that truck takes what, 3 wires to run? Literally. I mean, a battery and a couple of wires, and you can fire that thing up. It takes next to nothing. I mean, you could gravity feed it from a 5-gallon can to the carburetor with no fuel pump.
Yeah. You can make it work. Right. And so basically, because I think what we decided this morning, my wife and I, is we're gonna, if I can't find the right BMW, you can't source one for me. So
we'll talk about that.
Okay,
later.
we'll talk about that. But I was like, I'm going to buy an electric car, and then I'll put the generator in the back of the truck. So if I run out of juice. I just drive the truck. So some friends over last night, and they come out. They're like, I'm in my, and now some people call that a redneck rig, But I'm like, I'm a professional. I get to drive what I want to drive. You do you, I'll do me. But they both drive Teslas, and I said, well, I was looking at Tesla. I didn't want to spend that much. So I got this. And they're like, it's the exact opposite.
It is.
It is. But that's okay. And I think once everybody stops using all the gas, I think gas is going to get cheaper.
Well, not only that, but I think electric cars are phenomenal. What specifically Tesla has done to push the technology is unbelievable. What they can do is really, really cool, but it doesn't fit everyone's needs.
Right.
If I lived in San Francisco or a big city, I'd probably own one in a heartbeat. But I live 20 miles away from the shop, and I don't want to have to deal with charging it every night. I mean, I forget to bring my keys in from the car half the time. You think I'm going to remember to plug it in?
Right.
So, just those kind of things. Phenomenal vehicles, great cars for a lot of people, but it's also not realistic for a lot of people. I mean, is there a charging station where I live? Oh, I don't own a house.
Right.
How do I charge this? And now I've got a plan where I eat lunch where there's a supercharger nearby, or,
right.
It's just, at what point are you kind of owned by your automobile rather than owning your automobile?
Right.
The hybrids that I think with the new technology of the electric cars that I would like to see come out, and I think there's a chance will come out in the next few years, could be really incredible.
Okay.
You could have cars that have a combined, 500-600 horsepower between an electric motor and a gasoline or diesel engine.
Instant juice off the line.
Just incredible acceleration, all the benefits of that electric car. But, you've got a 5-gallon gas tank. So, real small, not as big of a battery pack, but you can fill it up anytime, right? Mm-hmm. Stop the gas station, fill it up, walk away. And it also gets 80 or 90 miles per gallon.
Or you can tow the generator with the Tesla.
There you go. There's actually a guy that did that. He put one in the back seat of his Model S, and I think he got it was about 700 miles of range because the generator couldn't keep up.
Right.
It wasn't a big enough generator to keep up with it.
Right. Well, no, again, that's right. I put in my order for the Cybertruck, right, which I don't think they're ever going to make because I can put the generator in the back. Right. Anyway, I digress. But then we're talking about ways to make a buck or two, thinking about your automobile choice. I just thought it'd be good fodder. John is an expert in all things BMW, but also not only a good guy, but just, one of those things, if you need to have your BMW looked at, I would encourage you to consider Bimmer Experts, because he's the most knowledgeable guy I've ever run into, and he's probably as honest as the day is long. So, finally somebody you can trust, you go in and talk to. So when we come back, he's going to tell us the number one thing you need to know before you buy your next car. You heard it here and only here. It's Bosma On Business, News Talk 780 KOH.
The Rolling Stone Music Now podcast gets inside the biggest stories with Rolling Stone senior writer Brian Hyatt.
Now here is my conversation with Jacob Knoll. Your story is an amazing one, and obviously you lost your dad when you were only 1 year old.
It was definitely a screwy way to grow up. I think that a lot of people never heard of who I am, and then they see me joining this band, and they must think this kid must have just been handed everything, or nepotism kid. It's a gift that I have an opportunity to sing in such a big band like my father and my uncle's band, Sublime.
Rolling Stone Music Now, wherever you listen.
Welcome back to Bosma On Business. Your host, Mike Bosma. I appreciate my loyal listeners out there. Had a couple consults last week, and then that really were people listening to the show, and then like last week's message really resonated about saving $1 or $2 for the end of the year. Spend $1 on your kiddos, save $1 for their future. It's how that works, right? Just kind of working both, and trying to solve the riddle of do I need to spend all the money or should I be saving it? And I think, as we were talking to John Trautwein, owner of Bimmer Experts, it really, boils down to a couple of key things. But John, is, as people are thinking, do they go buy the car, put the big red bow on it? So before they buy their next vehicle, what's the number one thing, the big aha that they should think about before they buy it?
I would say just be informed on what you're buying, and does it make sense to go buy a new car or a new used car? Are you inheriting someone else's problem? And really just be informed about it. Who's going to work on it? As we get these newer cars, you need factory tools, even as an independent shop doing, whether it's a Toyota or a Honda or a BMW, you really do need a lot of these specialized equipment and tools to get into them and see, is this car healthy? Has it been neglected? Has it been abused? Is it worth spending that money, whether it's $10,000 or $100,000 or more? We had a customer that was ready to buy a newer X3, being a 2 to 3 year old car. Was looking at CarMax, which I think is a great place to buy a car. He had to bring us 3 separate cars before we found one that was worth keeping. Wow! And he, CarMax, it was probably the worst experience I've had, but they were great to deal with, stood behind it wonderfully. It was not a negative experience. He'd buy there again. But the cars, they didn't know what to look for in their very thorough inspection process. But they don't work on BMWs all day. Right. And they didn't know what to look for, where to look for. There was bad body work that had been done, things like that. That's like, do you really want this car? We know it's been wrecked. You're spending a pretty nice chunk to buy a 2 to 3 year old car. You're planning to keep it for 10 years. Do you want to start with one that's already been wrecked and you don't know the story? Probably doesn't make sense. So that's where it goes back to be informed. Who's going to work on my car? What's the service going to cost? Is an oil service $70? Is an oil service $300? Some cars are. Right. Some oil costs $30 a quart. What? There's 12 quarts? Right. Oh, right. Wow. I wasn't ready for that. Right. My Honda was like $60. Right. Yeah. This ain't it's not your Honda. It's not your Honda, Dorothy. Sorry. Exactly. And so be informed on, who's going to do the service? What's it going to cost? What's it going to need? What kind of miles am I going to get out? How long are tires going to last? I buy that 600 horsepower Cadillac, and hey, guess what? It needs summer tires, and it only gets about 6,000 miles out of a set of tires that cost a lot of money. All the stuff you don't think of. That's why you listen to the show, John. It's like, I didn't even think about tires or maintenance or any of the rest of it. So, no, good intel. Of course, as I mentioned, if you need some help with your situation, we do provide for a free consultation, 775-786-4900, mbosma@keystone.cpa. And especially, I'm just really surprised at how many I've mentioned on previous shows, audits that are kind of popping out right there. And if you need a kind of a second opinion on maybe kind of what's might be lurking under the hood of your tax return, we would absolutely be honored to be able to do that. We give you an hour of our time for free. So anyway, 775-786 mbosma@keystone.cpa. John, thank you so much for coming, sharing your journey, and wish you and yours a great holiday.
Speaking of holidays, next week, oh my gosh, it's December already. My, how time flies. Next week, more entrepreneurs, more business awesome. Until then, keep your business engine humming. It's Bosma On Business. News Talk 780, KOH.
Named one of the best personal finance podcasts, The Stacking Benjamin Show with Joe and his friends makes financial literacy fun.
Work hard and save your money. That way, when you're old like me, you can buy the things that only young people can enjoy.
Squirrel watching.
You heard it here first. Get yourself a squirrel cam. Spend $30 a month on nuts, and you'll be at early retirement before you know it.
No, Piggy, this is the road to a podcast nobody listens to.
Find out more by searching the Stacking Benjamins podcast, wherever you listen.